I didn't mean to look at her for that long. But when I did, when her eyes found mine across that dim, too quiet room, it felt like something in the air had shifted, just enough to make breathing feel different. She was standing by the window, one hand resting on the frame, the other wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. The late afternoon light pressed against her face, soft and warm, making her look both untouchable and deeply human at the same time. I remember thinking she carried silence like jewelry, not heavy, but intentional. I wasn't supposed to be there long. Just dropping off a few papers for the community project she ran. But somehow either of us moved much. "Thanks for bringing these," she said finally, her voice low, even, like she was careful not to disturb the air between us. "No problem," I replied, though my hand was still half stuck in my pocket, unsure whether to stay or go. There was a faint tremor in the quiet, not sound, exactly, but awareness. I could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak of the wooden floor when either of us shifted our weight. Every second stretched, bending around us in slow motion. Her name was Elena. I'd known it before today, heard it said in passing, but it felt different now, heavier, like a word I wasn't supposed to say too loudly. She took a small step closer, just enough for the scent of her perfume, something warm and faintly floral, to reach me. It wasn't overpowering. It felt like her. Subtle, deliberate. "You're quieter than most," she said, half smiling. "Makes people nervous." I laughed under my breath. "Maybe I'm just listening." Her eyes lifted then, slow, steady, and I felt that quiet smile fade into something else. Something that shouldn't have been happening between two people who just met, but somehow already knew too much. She looked at me like she could read the things I hadn't learned to hide yet. And for a moment, I wanted to say something, anything, but every thought tangled in my throat. She turned away first, setting the untouched mug down on the counter. Her fingers brushed the edge of it twice, like she was deciding whether to speak again or let the silence say enough. "Do you want some coffee?" she asked without turning. "Sure," I said, though what I really wanted wasn't coffee. The way she moved, deliberate, calm, it made everything else feel too loud. The click of the kettle, the faint rush of water, even my own heartbeat, all of it framed around her quiet grace. When she handed me the cup, our fingers touched. Just a second, maybe less, but it felt longer. Her skin was warm, her nails neatly kept, the kind of hands that told stories without words. She didn't pull back right away. Neither did I. Her eyes met mine again, and this time, I forgot what I was supposed to say. "You're staring," she said softly, not as a question. I almost smiled. "You noticed." That earned me the smallest laugh, a sound that felt both like a warning and an invitation. For a heartbeat, it was just us, standing too close, saying too little. The world outside could have stopped, and I wouldn't have noticed. Then the sound came, sharp, unexpected. A knock at the door. Elena's hand slipped from mine. She turned, exhaling quietly, like she just remembered something she wasn't ready to face. "Excuse me," she said. And just like that, the moment was gone, leaving behind the warmth of her touch and a question I couldn't quite name. She didn't open the door right away. I stood there, pretending to scroll through my phone, listening to muffled voices inside. Then, finally, footsteps. The sound of her heels on the wood floor. When Elena opened the door, her expression was softer than I expected, maybe tired, maybe thoughtful. The knock from earlier, whoever it had been, was gone. "Sorry about before," she said. "It's been a long day." Her hair was pulled back loosely now, a few strands falling near her cheek. It made her look less like the composed woman I'd met, and more like someone real, someone who forgot to keep her armor on. I smiled gently. "You don't have to apologize." For a second, I thought she might close the door again. Instead, she stepped aside. "Come in. I still owe you that coffee." The kitchen light was dimmer now, only the glow from the window spilling in. The smell of rain had started drifting through the air, faint, damp, and cool. I leaned against the counter, watching her move. The quiet between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was the kind that holds weight. You ever notice, she began, her voice almost lost beneath the patter outside, how silence makes some people uncomfortable? Yeah, I said. But not you. She looked up at that, the smallest flicker of surprise in her eyes. You sound like you think you know me. I don't, I said. But I want to. That earned a slow exhale from her. She turned back to the sink, rinsing something that didn't need rinsing, just to keep her hands busy. My ex-husband used to say I was distant, she said suddenly. The sentence came out too even, like something she'd practiced saying without emotion. He wasn't wrong. I just stopped trying to explain what I needed. I didn't say anything. Some truths sound better when left untouched. She turned then, leaning on the counter across from me, her gaze steady but unreadable. And what about you? What about me? Why are you really here? A guy your age doesn't spend his evenings talking to someone like me. Someone like you? I repeated quietly. What's that supposed to mean? She almost smiled. Too old, too careful, too complicated. The air thickened around us. I took a small step closer, not enough to cross a line, but enough for her to notice. I think you underestimate how much space you take up, I said. For a heartbeat, she didn't breathe. Then she laughed, short, low, almost sad. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because it makes it harder to forget you're here. Her words landed softer than they should have. We stood like that, quiet, suspended, until the thunder rolled in the distance. A droplet from her hair slipped down to her neck. Without thinking, I reached out, brushing it away with my thumb. She froze, eyes flicking to mine, not pulling back, not moving closer. Her breath caught, a sound so small it barely existed. And then, barely above a whisper, she said, You should go before it rains harder. But neither of us moved. The air between us felt alive, not with words, but with everything we weren't saying. When she finally turned away, her shoulder brushed against mine, slow, deliberate, like a goodbye that didn't want to happen yet. The rain had kept on all night. By morning, the world outside her house felt blurred, quiet, the kind of stillness that makes you feel like you're trespassing on something intimate. I hadn't meant to come back. I told myself it was about returning the documents I forgot, or maybe checking on the leaky roof she mentioned. But when I saw her car still parked by the curb, I knew that wasn't the truth. Elena opened the door in a soft gray sweater, her hair still damp from a shower. The scent of her shampoo, clean, familiar, reached me before her words did. You again, she said, but there was no annoyance in it. Just that faint, tired amusement that somehow made her look younger. I thought you might need help with the roof, I said. You're persistent. You make it easy. She hesitated, then let me in. The living room felt different this time. Lived in. A blanket draped carelessly over the couch, a half-read book on the table. The kind of mess that only happens when someone's comfortable enough to stop pretending. She stood near the window, arms crossed, looking out at the rain. You shouldn't be here, she said softly. I know. People talk. I don't care what they say. She turned to me, and for the first time, I saw the flicker of fear behind her calm. I do. There was a sharp vibration, her phone buzzing on the counter. She didn't look, but I did. A name flashed on the screen, Daniel, Community Board. She ignored it. The sound stopped. The silence after it felt heavier. Your husband? I asked quietly. Ex, she corrected. But he still checks in. Likes to think I need his approval. I nodded. And do you? Her eyes lifted slowly, meeting mine. No. We stood there, the rain ticking against the glass, the air between us dense with everything we weren't supposed to feel. Then the sound of a car door outside. Voices, 2, maybe 3. Familiar tones from the neighborhood. Elena! A woman's voice called out. You home? Panic flickered across her face. She motioned for me to stay quiet, lips pressing together. I ducked behind the corner near the hallway as she opened the door a crack. Hey, she said, voice carefully light. What are you doing here? Just dropping off the event flyers, her friend replied. You missed the meeting last night. Oh, right, she said, forcing a smile. I wasn't feeling well. They chatted briefly, nothing suspicious, but I could hear the slight tremor in her tone, the way she lingered too long at the door. When it finally closed, she leaned against it, exhaling slowly. That was close, I said, stepping out. She jumped, then laughed, quiet, shaky. You shouldn't find this funny. I don't, I said, taking a step closer. But you look relieved. She shook her head, her eyes flicking down, then up again. You really don't know what you're doing, do you? Maybe not, I said, but I know what I want. Her lips parted, not quite a smile, not quite a refusal. We stood inches apart now, the sound of rain slipping between our heartbeats. Her breath brushed my neck as she whispered, This isn't supposed to happen. Then tell me to stop. She didn't. For a moment, the world narrowed, just her pulse, my hand brushing hers, the faint tremor in her voice when she finally said, Don't make me regret this. But she didn't move away. It started with a message I wasn't supposed to see. Her phone had lit up on the counter again, same name as before. Daniel. Just a few words this time, still worried about you. Dinner next week? I wasn't snooping. I was just standing too close when it appeared. She came in carrying a stack of papers, saw the look on my face, and froze. For a heartbeat, either of us spoke. Then, quietly, You shouldn't read things that aren't meant for you. I didn't mean to. But you did. There was no anger in her voice, just exhaustion, the kind that makes every word feel heavier. She set the papers down, leaned on the counter, and rubbed her temples. He still thinks he gets to check in, she said finally. Like I need to be reminded of what I walked away from. I hesitated, watching her. Do you miss him? Her eyes lifted sharply to mine, hurt then something else. You think this is about missing him? I didn't know how to answer. Maybe I didn't want to hear it if it was. She took a step toward me, deliberate, measured. The air changed. Whatever this is, she said, voice low, you have to understand it's not simple. I nodded, but my chest felt tight. You keep saying that. Then you look at me like it is. That made her stop. The rain outside had eased, but inside, the tension pressed thicker. Her expression softened, a kind of surrender mixed with disbelief. You shouldn't talk to me like that. Why? Because it makes it real. I didn't think. I just moved closer. Close enough that I could see the faint shimmer of moisture on her lips, the pulse fluttering at her throat. Maybe it already is, I said. She inhaled sharply, the sound caught between warning and want. I lifted a hand, brushed a strand of hair from her face. She didn't move away. Her eyes fluttered closed for half a second, then opened, glassy and uncertain. You have no idea what you're doing, she whispered. Then tell me. She stepped forward, so close now that her sweater brushed against my chest. I could feel her breath, warm against my neck. My hand hovered just at her waist, not touching, but aching to. This isn't fair, she said. To who? To you, she breathed. To me. Her voice trembled. She reached up, fingertips grazing my jaw, then froze there, like she just realized what she was about to do. I caught her wrist gently, holding it between us. The contact felt electric, not lust, not tenderness, something harder to name. Elena. She shook her head, eyes locked on mine. Don't. Her lips were so close I could taste her hesitation in the air between us. And then, the sound again. A key turning in the front door. Her entire body stiffened. We broke apart just as the handle turned, her hand slipping from mine like something guilty, unfinished. The sound of the key scraped against the lock like a warning. Elena moved faster than I'd ever seen her, straightening her sweater, smoothing her hair, pushing me gently but firmly toward the kitchen doorway. Stay here, she whispered. Before I could ask why, the door opened. A man's voice filled the space. You left your phone at the cafe again. I froze. The name flashed in my mind, Daniel. He stepped into the room, holding her phone out with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. Didn't expect to find you home? Elena's reply came a beat too late. I decided not to go out after all. He looked past her shoulder. His gaze swept the room, lingering just long enough to make my pulse spike. For a moment, I thought he saw me. Then, mercifully, he didn't. He placed the phone on the counter, his tone tightening. You know, people talk when they see your car parked with the lights on this late. Her jaw tightened. People always talk, Daniel. He sighed, the kind that pretends to be concerned but smells like ownership. I'm just trying to help. You stopped helping the day you started deciding for me, she said quietly. Something cracked under those words, not loud, but final. He looked at her like she just said something unforgivable. And then he left. The door closed, the silence following like smoke. When she turned back to me, I could see it, the tremor in her hands, the way her breath came shallow. I should have told you, she said, voice unsteady. About him. He's not just my ex. He's also the one who funds half the project you volunteer for. The words hit harder than I expected. Everything that had felt simple, human, now twisted into something that could ruin her, and me. You think he suspects? I asked. Her eyes flicked to mine. He doesn't need to. He just needs to think he does. She stepped closer, just one step, and it felt like everything that had been building between us narrowed to a single, dangerous thread. I didn't mean for this to happen, she whispered. You walked in, and suddenly Her voice broke. She turned away, pressing a hand to the counter. You make me forget who's watching. I moved closer, careful but drawn. Then let me remind you why. Her shoulders rose with a trembling breath. When she turned, her eyes glistened, not from tears, but something deeper. You don't understand, she said. If anyone finds out, I don't care. You should, she said, stepping back, though her body betrayed her. Her hand brushed mine as if by accident. Her pulse fluttered against her throat. For a moment neither of us moved. Then she whispered, He still has a key. The realization hit, the key, the door, the almost discovery. Everything safe had just vanished. And yet, in that same breath of danger, she looked at me with something raw, unguarded. I should tell you to leave, she said softly. But you won't, I murmured. Her lips parted, trembling, the admission in her silence louder than any confession. And when I finally reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. The storm came back that night. Thunder rolling low and far off, rain tapping like fingertips against the windows, steady, insistent, unending. Elena stood by the window again, arms crossed, watching it fall. I was sitting on the edge of her couch, still damp from running through the downpour. The silence between us had grown thick, alive with all the things we hadn't said since Daniel's visit. Finally, she spoke. You shouldn't have come back. I smiled faintly. You've said that before. This time, I mean it. Then tell me to leave. She didn't. Her reflection in the glass stared back at me instead, still, guarded, but trembling at the edges. I told him we're nothing, she said softly. That you just help with the project. That I barely know you. That's what you want to be true. She turned then, slowly, and there it was, everything she'd been trying to bury. Fear. Desire. Regret. I don't know what I want anymore, she whispered. I stood, moving closer until the air between us seemed to pulse. You do, I said quietly. You just don't think you should. Her breath caught. My hand hovered near her face, not touching yet, but close enough to feel the warmth of her skin. You don't understand what this costs, she said, her voice trembling now. My reputation. My work. Everything I've built. Maybe not, I said, but I know what it's worth. The words hung there, heavy, reckless, too real. She closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. When she opened them again, something had changed. She stepped forward until the space between us disappeared. I could feel her breath against my chin, her hand brushing against my chest. It wasn't calculated, it was a surrender she didn't know how to stop. "This shouldn't happen," she said, almost pleading. "Then stop me." She didn't move. Her fingers tightened slightly in my shirt, holding me there. For a heartbeat, we hovered in the same breath, her forehead nearly touching mine, her voice a whisper I could barely hear. "You make me feel 20 again," she said. "And that terrifies me. Maybe that's the point." She laughed softly, bitter and sweet all at once. "You think this is a beginning?" "No," I said, eyes locked on hers. "It's an answer." Her hand rose, slowly, trembling, brushing my cheek. The world outside vanished into the rhythm of rain and heartbeats. Then, almost imperceptibly, she leaned in. Our lips didn't meet, not yet. But the space between them disappeared until there was nothing left but breath and hesitation. And just as the distance broke, she whispered, "If I let this happen, there's no taking it back." "I know," I said. And in that moment, standing in her quiet house, the rain drumming against the windows, her pulse pressed to mine, we both knew that whatever came next, it was already too late to pretend we hadn't chosen. The rain had stopped some time before dawn, leaving the world outside washed clean and still. Light slipped through the half-open curtains, soft and uncertain, the kind of light that doesn't want to wake anyone. Elena sat on the couch, her knees pulled close, a mug of coffee cooling in her hands. She looked different in daylight, smaller somehow, not in presence but in the way she allowed herself to simply be. I stood near the window, pretending to look out, though my eyes kept finding her reflection in the glass. Neither of us said anything for a long time. The silence wasn't heavy now, just tender, careful, as if any word might break what we built in the dark. Finally she spoke. "Do you regret it?" Her voice was quiet, steady, but I could hear what hid beneath, not guilt, but the fragile hope that I'd say no. I turned, meeting her eyes. "No." She smiled, barely, but enough to make the air shift. "You should," she said, though the words didn't sound like she meant them. I walked closer, stopping just in front of her. The room smelled faintly of rain and coffee, familiar now, almost comforting. "I don't think love waits for permission," I said. She looked down, fingers tightening around the mug. "It's not love," she whispered, then glanced up again, softer. "Not yet. But it feels like something I've been afraid to want." I knelt beside her, resting my hands over hers. The mug was warm against our palms. Her fingers trembled once before settling, threading through mine. "I've spent half my life being careful," she said, her eyes searching mine. "Making sure I didn't need anyone enough to lose them. And now?" She leaned forward slightly, her forehead touching mine. "Now I think I'm tired of being careful." The words hung there, a confession and a release. I could feel her breath, the faint rise and fall of her chest, the quiet rhythm that had started to match my own. I didn't kiss her. I didn't have to. The way her hand slid up to rest against my neck, the way she exhaled and finally let her shoulders drop, it was enough. We stayed like that, not needing to fill the silence. There was no grand declaration, no promise of forever. Just two people who had crossed too many lines to pretend they hadn't, and who, somehow, didn't regret a single one. When she finally pulled back, she smiled, small, genuine. "You should go," she said, though her thumb was still tracing the back of my hand. "I know," I said. "But not yet." She laughed quietly, that soft, unguarded sound I'd come to wait for. "Not yet," she echoed. The morning light caught in her hair, and for the first time, she didn't look like someone I had to chase. She looked like someone who'd finally stopped running.